The night was thick with silence, as the billionaire Alexander Cole stood on the balcony of his glass mansion staring into the endless city lights. His heart was heavy, his mind restless, and his spirit carrying the weight of grief that had never lifted since the day he lost his wife 2 years ago. The world believed him to be a man who had it all: wealth, fame, power, yet inside he was hollow, his life reduced to routines, meetings, and empty victories, while loneliness carved at him like a blade. Memory of her face haunted him. He remembered the sound of her laughter echoing in their home, the way her eyes sparkled like a hidden flame. And then he remembered the funeral, the coffin, the dirt, the mourners, and the suffocating reality that his life partner was gone. People said time healed everything, but time had been merciless, only sharpening the edges of his pain. As the night stretched deeper, Alexander heard a faint voice behind him, one that did not belong inside his mansion. He turned quickly. His guards usually patrolled every corner, yet there she was, a black girl, no older than 20, standing barefoot at the edge of the marble floor, her clothes simple, her hair wild, her eyes burning with something he could not name. Shock struck him harder than the cold night air. How had she entered his fortress home, and why was she staring at him with such unshakable conviction? For a moment they just looked at each other, the city lights humming in the distance, and then she spoke in a trembling but steady tone. "Your wife is still alive." The words sliced through him, sharper than glass. His chest tightened, his throat closed, his knees nearly gave way. He wanted to laugh, to scream, to silence her, but her gaze did not falter. Her voice had the weight of someone who knew the truth and the authority of someone who had nothing left to lose. Xander stepped closer, anger and disbelief colliding in him. He demanded to know what game she was playing, who sent her, what she wanted, but she did not move, she did not flinch. Her lips only repeated the same words: "Your wife is alive, and she needs you." A storm raged in his chest. The image of the coffin burned into his mind. The memory of signing the death certificate flashed before his eyes. He had held her cold hand one last time in the hospital. How could she be alive? How could this stranger stand in his home and say such things with such certainty? The guards rushed in, weapons raised. Confusion painted their faces as they saw the girl, unarmed, fragile, yet unafraid. Alexander raised his hand to stop them, his eyes never leaving hers. He demanded she explain herself, and she whispered with urgency, "I saw her. They hid her from you, but I know where she is." The air thickened, tension vibrating in every corner of the room. The billionaire tried to steady his breath, but the world tilted under him. Each word she spoke threatened the foundation of everything he believed. He wondered if grief had broken him so much that he was imagining this moment, hallucinating, her voice conjuring a ghost. But then her hand trembled as she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and glimmering under the light. A silver bracelet. His breath caught. He knew that bracelet he had given it to his wife on their 10th anniversary, engraved with their initials and the phrase, "Forever Us." His hands shook as he took it. From her, it was scratched, dirt-stained, but real, undeniably real. His chest thundered. He staggered back, gripping the balcony rail. His mind spiraled in chaos, every cell screaming, "This cannot be true," yet every part of him aching to believe it. The girl's eyes glistened with tears. She whispered, "They lied to you, Mr. Cole. Powerful people, very powerful people. They wanted her gone, but she fought, she survived, and she is waiting for youth guards." Shifted uneasily, unsure whether to seize her or listen. Alexander raised his hand again, silencing them, his eyes fixed on the girl with the desperation of a drowning man reaching for air. "Tell me everything," he demanded, his voice raw and cracking. "Tell me now." The girl hesitated, her body trembling but her will unbroken. She said, "I cannot tell you everything. Here they are watching. They always watch. But if you trust me, I will take you to her. I will show you where she Is Alexander's mind battled itself. Trust was a currency he never spent. Easily his empire was built on suspicion contracts, lawyers' security, yet here he was standing before a barefoot girl who shattered his world with one sentence. He could not think logically, he could not breathe rationally, every nerve burned with hope and terror. The city lights blurred behind him, the night pressed closer, the air felt heavy, as if the world itself held its breath. He whispered with desperation, "If you are lying, I will destroy you, and if you are telling the truth, I will owe you my life." The girl nodded, a single tear rolling down her cheek. Then she said, "Meet me tomorrow at the old train station on the east side. Come alone. If they see you with me, she will die before he could respond. She darted toward the shadows faster than the guards could catch her, disappearing into the night like a phantom, leaving only the bracelet in his hand and a storm in his heart. Cole, billionaire, titan, broken widower, stood frozen on his balcony, the weight of the bracelet cutting into his palm, and a single question tearing him apart. Could it be true? The night swallowed him whole, but for the first time in years his chest burned not only with grief, but with something dangerous, something he thought had died with her. The night after the girl vanished, Alexander Cole barely slept. His mind was a storm of images, memories, and doubts. He sat in his office staring at the silver bracelet lying on his desk, his hand trembling every time he touched it. He replayed her words over and over, "Your wife is alive." Each repetition cut him deeper, but also pulled him further into the dangerous grip of hope. He had sworn never to allow himself such illusions, yet here he was ready to risk everything for the smallest chance it could be true. By dawn his eyes were bloodshot, his heart pounding with both dread and anticipation. He dismissed his staff, ordered his guards to keep their distance, and dressed simply in dark clothes. Unlike the tailored suits he wore for the world, he wanted to be unrecognizable. He wanted no eyes on him. Not today. He drove himself, something he had not done in years. The city blurred past his windshield as he followed the directions toward the east side. The old train station rose like a skeleton of a forgotten era, rust and dust painting its bones, broken windows gaping like hollow eyes, weeds crawling through the cracks of the pavement. The place smelled of decay and abandonment, yet it carried a strange air of secrecy. It was the kind of place where secrets could live, hidden away from the polished towers of his empire. Alexander stepped inside the vast hall, his footsteps echoing like ghosts, the silence thick, only broken by the flutter of pigeons high in the rafters. He gripped the bracelet in his pocket and scanned the shadows, every nerve alive, every instinct screaming at him to stay cautious. He felt the weight of unseen eyes watching, yet no one was there until a faint whisper called his name. He turned sharply and saw her, the black girl from last night, standing half hidden behind a rusted pillar. Her eyes darting nervously, she beckoned him closer. Her movements quick and fragile, as if every second mattered. Alexander approached, his chest tightening, his voice low and urgent. "Where is she? Tell me now." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head, whispering, "We cannot stay here. They know you are looking, and if they find us, she will be killed." She pulled out a folded scrap of paper, slipping it into his hand, her fingers cold and trembling. The paper bore an address scribbled hastily, along with a single line, "She is there, but do not go alone. Bring no one. You can trust no one but yourself." He stared at the note, his mind racing. The address belonged to the outskirts of the city, a desolate industrial zone, long abandoned by legitimate businesses, but often rumored to hide dangerous dealings. He looked back at her, demanding answers. "Who are you? How do you know this? How do I know you are not using me?" Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Because I was there. I saw them. I was taken to... I escaped, but she could not, and if you do not go soon, they will silence her forever." Phelps felt his throat close, the fire in his chest intensifying his entire empire. His fortune, his power, seemed meaningless in this moment, compared to the fragile chance of finding the truth. He wanted to drag her into the light, forced her to explain everything, but before he could, a sudden crash echoed through the station, the sound of heavy boots. The girl's eyes widened in terror. She screamed "Run!" and bolted toward a side exit. Armed men burst through the entrance, faces covered, weapons raised. Alexander's heart lurched. He had not expected them so soon. Instinct took over. He sprinted after the girl, ducking behind pillars as bullets shattered the glass above him. The pigeons exploded into flight. Chaos filling the station. He could hear her footsteps pounding desperately against the concrete. He pushed himself harder than he had in years. Lungs burning, legs aching, but the need to reach her overpowering everything. They burst out into the back alley, the morning sun barely breaking through the smog. The girl raced ahead, weaving through debris. Alexander struggled to keep pace, but his determination held him steady. One of the masked men closed in, aiming at her. Alexander, without thinking, grabbed a rusted pipe from the ground and swung with a force he did not know he had. The man fell, the sound of his weapon clattering against the pavement filling the air. Alexander's hands trembled. He had not fought like this since his youth, but desperation made him savage. The girls screamed this way, and they dashed into a narrow passage between collapsed walls. The gunfire faded behind them, though shouts still echoed. The girl collapsed against the wall, panting, her eyes wild with fear. She whispered, "They know you now. They will come for you. They will come for both of us." As Alexander leaned against the wall, his chest heaving, the taste of metal in his mouth, the enormity of what just happened crushing down on him. He was no longer just a grieving man chasing hope. He was a target in a game he did not understand. He turned to her, demanding answers. "Who are they? Why would they want my wife? Gone her?" Lips quivered, her eyes filled with pain. She whispered, "They are men with power, more power than even you, Mr. Cole. Men who profit from keeping her hidden. She knows something that could burn them all, and they will never let us." Words shook him to his core. His empire had crossed paths with corruption before, but nothing on this scale, nothing that touched his personal life like this. The thought that his wife might be alive, suffering because of secrets meant to destroy men more powerful than him, ignited something violent within him. The girl grabbed his arm, her voice pleading, "You cannot do this alone. You must choose wisely who to trust. Even your closest allies may already be bought if you misstep." She Alex stared at her, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning. He had built his empire on reading people, and in her eyes he saw no greed, no deception, only fear and truth, raw and painful. He nodded slowly, his voice hoarse. "Then show me, take me to her." She shook her head. "Not yet. If we go now, we will die. You must prepare, gather what you need, and meet me again tonight. Bring no guards, bring no eyes, only you and me." She pressed his hand with trembling urgency. "If you truly want to see her alive, you must trust me." Alexander's mind was torn between rage and patience, between the need to storm the address that moment and the cold strategy that had built his empire. He knew rushing in blind could mean death for her, and for him. He swallowed the storm in his chest and nodded his acceptance. The girl's eyes softened with relief. She whispered, "Tonight," and before he could respond, she slipped away into the labyrinth of alleys, disappearing once again, like smoke. Alexander stood alone, his body trembling, his soul roaring with emotions he could barely contain. Grief, rage, hope, terror, it all tangled inside him until he could barely breathe. He looked at the crumpled paper in his hand, the address glaring back like a forbidden door. His knuckles whitened. Around Eth returned to his car, driving through the city with haunted eyes. He thought of his board members, his business partners, his security team. Could he trust any of them, or were they already in the pockets of the men she spoke of? He thought Of his friends, the few who remained after years of wealth and power, who among them would betray him for a taste of influence? He realized with a chill he might truly be alone in this hunt. When night fell, Alexander stood once again outside the decaying skeleton of the station, his heart pounding, his body cloaked in darkness. He had left everything behind. His phone, his guards, his identity stripped down to nothing but a man desperate to see the truth with his own eyes. He waited, the shadows whispering around him, until finally she appeared, the black girl, her eyes fierce though her body trembled. She walked toward him silently, slipping into the passenger seat of his car seat. Handed him a burner phone, her voice quiet. Use this from now on, they can track everything else. If you want to save her, you must let go of the life you know. The weight of her words crushed him yet. He took the phone, slipping it into his pocket without protest. He knew she was right. His wealth could not shield him here. His influence could not protect him. This was a different battlefield, one where every move was life or death. The car engine rumbled softly as they drove through the veins of the sleeping city toward the outskirts, toward the address that could change everything. Alexander's hands gripped the wheel tighter with every mile. His heart a storm, his mind a battlefield of hope and fear. Finally they reached the zone factories, long abandoned, looming like giants in the night. The girl pointed to a warehouse, her voice barely audible. She is inside there, guarded heavily but alive. I swear to you. Alexander stared at the dark, hulking structure, his body shaking, his soul screaming. The moment was here, the truth within reach, yet danger thicker than ever. He turned to the girl, her eyes glowing with conviction and fear. Before he could move, before he could even breathe, a sharp knock rattled the car window. Alexander turned and froze as a masked figure pressed a gun against the glass. His heart thundered, his grip tightening on the wheel. The girl gasped, her voice cracking. They found us. The glass of the window vibrated under the cold touch of the gun barrel. Alexander Cole felt his breath catch his mind, racing through 1,000 possible moves. In an instant, the black girl froze beside him, her wide eyes reflecting the streetlights. Her lips parted, but no words came. His entire body burned with the instinct to fight, yet he knew a wrong move meant the ends. Lowly he raised his hands from the wheel, his voice rough but steady. What do you want? The masked figure leaned closer, his voice muffled and chilling. You should not have come here, billionaire. This place is not for men like you be. For Alexander could answer, another masked man appeared on the passenger side, yanking the door open and dragging the black girl out. She screamed, thrashing against his grip, but his strength overpowered her. Alexander's chest burned with rage. He flung his door open, stepping into the night air, his fists clenched. But before he could lunge, a third man appeared, pressing another gun to his chest. The warehouse loomed behind them, dark and hollow, like a beast waiting to swallow them whole. The leader of the men gestured with his weapon. Move, both of you. Inside, Alexander's jaw tightened. Every nerve screamed at him to resist, but he forced his body to comply. The girl's trembling hand brushed his arm as they were pushed forward, her whispered words barely reaching his ears. Stay alive, that is all that matters. They were herded into the cavernous warehouse, the smell of rust and oil thick in the air. Shadows stretched across the cracked floor, broken machinery standing like grave markers. Dim lights flickered overhead, revealing more masked men positioned along the walls, their weapons trained with mechanical precision. At the center stood a man without a mask, tall, broad, and wearing a dark tailored coat, his silver hair glinting under the weak light, his eyes cold like stone. Alexander recognized him instantly. Gregory Vance, a tycoon known for his ruthless dealings, a man whispered to control half the city's underground. Alexander had crossed paths with him in business, but never imagined he was tied to this nightmare. Vance's lips curved, into a mocking smile. Well, Alexander Cole, the grieving widower who could not leave the past behind, welcome to the truth. You should never have sought Alexander's chest tightened, his voice cutting through the silence. Where is she? Where is my wife? Vance chuckled, deep and cruel, tilting his head. You are a man of power, Alex. You of all people should know power demands sacrifice sometimes. People vanish sometimes, they die for the greater order. Your wife was supposed to be one of those sacrifices. The words stabbed Alexander's heart like knives. He stepped forward, fury blazing in his eyes. You are lying. Vance's smile darkened. He raised his hand, and one of the masked men stepped into the shadows, pulling forward a figure. Alexander's breath shattered in his chest, his knees weakening. It was a woman, her face pale, her wrists bound, her hair tangled, but her eyes, oh, those eyes, he knew them, even through the years, even through the pain. They were hers, they were his wife's, strangled. Sound tore from his throat, the world blurred around him, his chest collapsing and expanding all at once. His vision tunneled only on her. She looked broken, fragile, yet alive. The girl gasped to tears, streaking down her cheeks, whispering, I told you. Alexander staggered forward, but the gun at his chest forced him still. Vance raised a hand almost lazily and said, not so fast. Alex, she lives, yes, but whether she continues to live depends entirely on you. His wife's lips trembled, her eyes filled with desperate tears. She tried to speak, but the gag muffled her voice. Alexander's heart shattered, yet blazed at the same time, rage and love colliding inside him like fire and thunder. He roared, what do you want? Vance stepped closer, his voice low and venomous. I want you to walk away, Alex. I want you to forget you saw her, forget you heard she lived. Return to your empire and let this ghost stay buried. If you try to take her from me, if you try to fight me, then she dies here and now, and I promise you she will not be the only one to fall. The warehouse echoed with silence. Alexander's breath ragged, his mind torn, his fists shaking. Every instinct told him to fight, to tear this man apart, to take her and run, but the barrel of the guns, the trembling of his wife, the sheer coldness in Vance's eyes reminded him one reckless move could end everything. The girl beside him whispered, her voice urgent but quiet, trust me, there is another way. Alexander clenched his teeth, his soul screaming. At the impossible choice before him, he locked eyes with his wife, and in her gaze he saw not only fear but strength, a silent plea for him not to give up, not to surrender. His voice cracked but steady. He asked, what do you gain from this? Why keep her alive if she is such a threat? Vance smirked, stepping into the light. She knows things. She saw things she should never have seen, evidence that could burn my empire to ash. I kept her alive because her silence is more valuable than her death. But you, Alex, by coming here, you tipped the balance. The girl's eyes darted around the room, her body tense. She whispered again, almost inaudible, they will kill us unless we move now. Alexander's mind raced strategy, clawing through the chaos. He had built empires by seeing moves others could not, by calculating risks. Others feared, but this was different. This was not stocks or contracts. This was life and death. This was his wife. Vance gestured to his men. Bind them both, he ordered the girl, and the billionaire. Take them away. I will decide later what to do. Masked men advanced. Alexander's pulse roared like thunder. The girl's hand reached for his, and in that instant, something inside him snapped. He could not, he would not be bound again, not when she was within reach, not when truth blazed before his eyes. With a sudden movement, Alexander seized the rusted pipe he had slipped from the ground earlier, hidden along his sleeve, and swung with ferocious force. The nearest masked man fell with a grunt. The girl kicked another in the knee, seizing his weapon. Chaos exploded across the warehouse. Bullets flying, shouts echoing, sparks from ricochets lighting the shadows. Alexander lunged toward his wife, smashing through the men holding his arms, trembling as he ripped the gag from her mouth. Her voice broke into a sob. Alexei held her tight for a heartbeat before dragging her behind the broken machinery. Shielding her from the storm, Vance shouted, furious, "Kill them all!" The warehouse erupted into war. Alexander's chest heaved. His wife clung to him, whispering, "I thought you would never find me." Her tears soaking his shirt, he pressed his forehead to hers, whispering, "I will never lose you again, no matter what." The black girl crawled beside them, thrusting the stolen weapon into Alexander's hand, her voice fierce, "We fight or we die." The billionaire gripped the weapon, his heart thundering, his body ignited by love, by rage, by hope, and for the first time in years, by poster. Shadows roared with gunfire, enemies closing in the future, uncertain the odds. Impossible, yet Alexander Cole, the man who had once been broken, now burned with unshakable fire. He rose from the ground, weapon-ready, eyes locked on the enemy, his voice low and deadly, "Then let us fight." The gunfire grew louder, the night itself trembling under the clash. The warehouse became a battlefield, and in that moment Alexander knew the hunt had only just begun. The warehouse thundered with the sound of bullets, shouts, and crashing metal. Alexander Cole moved like a man possessed, his grip tight around the stolen weapon, every shot ringing in his ears. His wife pressed against the machinery behind him, her eyes wide with terror, yet blazing with trust. The black girl crouched low, darting her eyes between advancing shadows, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Keep moving, do not let them corner us." Alexander fired at the figures closing in his chest, burning his heart, hammering faster than it ever had, each movement pulled from some primal place buried deep within him. He was not a businessman in this moment. He was a husband, a fighter, a man clawing for the life he thought he had lost forever. The masked men kept coming, ruthless, precise, trained killers sent to erase the truth. Vance's cold laughter echoed above it all like a predator savoring the kill. Through the haze of battle, Alexander pulled his wife closer, his arms shaking as he shielded her from flying shards of glass. She whispered against his ear, "I thought I would die here. I thought you had forgotten me." He pressed his forehead against hers for a fleeting second, his voice raw, "I never stopped loving you, and I will burn this place to the ground before I let them take you again." The black girl leaped forward, grabbing a fallen man's weapon, tossing it toward Alexander's wife. "Take it, fight if you can," she urged. The woman's trembling hands grasped the gun, her breath ragged, but her eyes firm, despite the fear she had been held captive for years. Yet within her lived a spark refusing to die. They moved together like desperate wolves, Alexander covering the left, the black girl the right, his wife behind them, clutching the weapon with trembling strength, each second stretching like eternity, each heartbeat a countdown to either freedom or death. They grenade clattered across the floor, the hiss of smoke flooding the air. Alexander roared, pulling his wife down as the explosion shook the foundation, the air filled with choking dust, screams mixing with the ringing in his ears. His vision blurred, but his grip never loosened. Vance's voice cut through the haze, arrogant and cruel. "Do you see? Alex, you cannot win. You may kill a few, but my reach is endless. Surrender. Now watch her die." Agon. Alexander's fury ignited hotter than fire. He rose from the smoke, his voice thunderous, "No one takes her from me, no one." His shots tore through the smoke, men collapsing around him, shadows falling one by one, yet more kept coming, endless waves determined to drown him. The black girl pressed a hand to his arm, shouting, "We need to escape, not fight forever. Follow me now." She darted toward the far end of the warehouse, weaving between broken beams. Alexander dragged his wife with him, the three moving like hunted animals through the labyrinth of rust and ruined, bullets snapping at their heels. They reached a rusted stairwell, climbing to the upper catwalks, the metal groaning under their weight, the black girl leading with speed, born of desperation. Alexander's wife, gasping each step but refusing to let go Alexander, supporting her with one arm while firing wildly with the other, their bodies burned, but their spirits clung to survival on the catwalk. They looked down at the chaos below, masked men scattering the smoke, choking the air. Vance glaring up at them, his face twisted with rage. He shouted after them, "You cannot escape, Alex even. If you run, I will tear the world apart." To find youth black girl yanked open a service door, leading them into a dark passage. The narrow corridor winding into the skeleton of the factory, they stumbled through shadows, the air damp with rust there. Lungs burning, Alexander's mind racing. How long had she been held here? What horrors had she endured? What truths were locked inside her that made men like Vance desperate to erase her existence finally? They burst into the night air behind the warehouse, the stars faint above the polluted sky, the city lights, a distant promise of safety. The black girl motioned them toward an abandoned truck half buried in weeds. She slid into the driver's seat, hot-wiring it with frantic speed, the engine coughing alive. Alexander lifted his wife into the seat beside him, her body trembling against his. Arms around her like steel, the truck roared forward, bouncing over cracked asphalt. The warehouse shrinking behind them, yet the chase was far from. Overhead lights flared in the mirrors, black SUVs tearing after them, engines growling like beasts. The girl cursed under her breath, gripping the wheel tighter. They will not let go. They will chase us until the end. Alexander's wife clutched his hand, whispering with a trembling voice, "Alex, they wanted me silenced because I saw something that could destroy them all. I kept it hidden. I kept it alive for this moment." His eyes locked on hers, desperate and wild. "What is it? What do you?" No, she shook her head, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Not here, not yet. If I tell you now, they will kill us before we reach safety. You must trust me." The truck swerved as bullets shattered the back window. Alexander shielded her with his body rage. Burning hotter, he leaned toward the black girl, his voice sharp. "Find a way, lose them." She gritted her teeth, steering into a narrow underpass. The concrete wall scraping as the truck barreled through, sparks flying behind them, the SUVs closing fast, their lights blinding in the mirrors. Alexander fired out the shattered rear window, his shots cracking into the night. One SUV veering into the wall, spinning out, but the others pushed closer, relentless. The black girl shouted, "Hold on," and jerked the wheel hard. The truck skidded through a sharp turn onto a dirt road leading into the skeletal remains of another industrial yard. The darkness thicker here, broken streetlights casting long, jagged shadows. The SUVs roared behind them like wolves. On the hunt, Alexander's wife buried her face against his chest, whispering, "I cannot lose you again. I cannot." He pressed his lips to her hair, whispering fiercely, "You will not, I swear." The black girl slammed the brakes, suddenly, the truck screeching to a halt. Alexander nearly thrown forward before he saw why. In the road ahead, a barricade of armed men waiting, their weapons gleaming under faint light. They were surrounded, trapped between the SUVs and the barricade, between death ahead and death behind. Alexander's pulse roared, his wife clutched him tighter. The black girl's jaw set, her eyes blazing with defiance. She whispered, "This is where we stand." The armed men stepped forward, their leader shouting out, "Surrender, and we may let her live. Fight, and all three of you die here tonight." Alexander looked at his wife, her tear-filled eyes meeting his. He looked at the black girl, fierce and unbroken, beside him. His own heart thundered with a clarity he had not felt in years. He had nothing left to lose, nothing left but the people in this truck, and he would fight the world itself before surrendering them. He gripped the weapon tighter, his voice low to them both. "Then we fight together." The night air crackled with tension, the armed men raising their rifles, the SUVs blocking their escape. the world balanced on a knife's edge. Alexander's heart steadied his eyes, blazing his wife, whispering his name, the black girl raising her weapon beside him, and then from the shadows behind the barricade a new figure stepped forward, tall, cloaked face half hidden, his voice cutting through the night. "Wait, do not fire." The armed men froze, lowering their rifles slightly. Alexander's breath caught his chest, burning with recognition though. The years and the distance, his eyes widened in disbelief, because the voice belonged to someone he once trusted more than a brother, someone he had thought dead long ago. The figure pulled back, the hood revealing a face. Alexander knew a face that shattered the ground beneath him, but his oldest friend. The night froze as Alexander Cole stared at the face before him, his heart lurching violently, his lungs refusing to draw air. It was Samuel Grant, his oldest friend, the man he had built his empire beside, the one who had stood at his wedding, the one who had sworn loyalty in blood and business alike. Samuel, who had vanished years ago, presumed dead in an accident, but alive, standing here, leading the very men who hunted him. Alexander's voice cracked with rage and disbelief. "Samuel, it cannot be you." Samuel's cold eyes glittered under the dim light, his face marked with scars, his voice deep and steady. "Yes, Alex, it is me, and I wish for your sake that you had never come here." The black girl's eyes widened, her grip tightening on the weapon, her voice trembling. "You know him, you know this." Alexander nodded, his chest heaving. "He was my brother, not by blood, but by bond. We built everything together." Until he disappeared. Samuel's lips twisted into a bitter smile. "I did not disappear, Alex. I was erased, and you were too blind to see it. The same men who trapped your wife took me too, but unlike her, I chose to survive on their side, and I have thrived. In the shadows while you sat in your glass towers crying over ghost." Alexander's wife clutched his arm, her voice breaking. "Samuel, why would you do this? Why would you turn against us?" His eyes softened for only a second before turning sharp again. "Because power demands sacrifice. Alex, and you, of all people, should understand that your empire grew because I bled for it, because I cut the deals you were too noble to touch. When they offered me a place at their table, I took it while you were left with nothing but grief and illusion." Alexander's heart roared, fury and betrayal clashing with sorrow. Samuel was more than a friend, he was family. To know he had sided with Vance, with the men who tortured his wife, broke something inside him, yet also fueled a fire fiercer than ever. The armed men shifted their weapons, waiting for Samuel's command. The air electric with the promise of blood. The black girl whispered urgently, "We cannot let them take us. Alex, we will never leave alive. If we surrender." Samuel raised his hand, silence settling over the standoff, his voice steady. "I do not want to kill you, Alex. Walk away, leave her with us, and live. You still have your empire, your billions, your legacy. Take them and go." Alexander's wife's voice shattered with fury. "Never, I will die before I stay in their hands again." Alexander's eyes locked on Samuel's, his voice raw. "No. Samuel, you took everything from me, but you will not take her again, not this time." Samuel's jaw tightened, his voice cold. "Then you have chosen death." The moment shattered as the black girl fired, the sound ripping through the night, chaos erupting. The barricade exploded in motion, weapons flashing, bullets screaming. The truck rocked with impacts, glass shattering. Alexander pulled his wife down, covering her with his body, his soul burning, his vision red. He returned fire with unrelenting fury, the years of grief channeling into each trigger pull, each burst of rage. The black girl moved like lightning, weaving between cover her shots, precise, deadly. She had fought this fight before. Alexander realized she was no ordinary survivor. She was trained, forged by the very men she now fought against. Her body bore the scars of survival, and her spirit the fire Of vengeance Samuel advanced through the hail of bullets, his men falling around him, but his eyes never leaving Alexander. He fired with ruthless precision, each shot grazing too close, each step bringing him nearer. Alexander's wife clung to him, whispering, "You cannot let him win, Alex, you cannot." The truck engine roared again, the black girl shouting, "Drive, now." Alexander slammed the wheels, screaming as the vehicle lurched forward, smashing through the barricade, the armed men scattering. Bodies flung aside the path, opening for only a heartbeat. Samuel's furious roar echoing behind them as the truck sped into the night. Bullets rained on them, the rear windows shattered. Alexander's wife screamed, clinging to him, the black girl returning fire through the open back, her voice fierce. "Keep driving, do not stop." The road blurred beneath them, the city lights distant, the night endless. Samuel's men still in pursuit, their headlights cutting through the dark like predators on the hunt. Alexander's grip on the wheel, iron, his body trembling, yet his will unbreakable. His wife's hand clutched in his chest, burning with the promise of survival. The black girl leaned forward, her voice sharp, "There is a safe house not far. I know it from before. We can make it, if we last long enough." Alexander's wife turned to her desperate, "How do you know these places?" The girl's voice cracked, "Because I was one of them once, taken when I was young, forced to serve, forced to spy, until I escaped. I swore I would free others like me. I swore I would make them pale." Alexander glanced at her, his heart heavy yet filled with gratitude. "You saved me, you saved her. I owe you everything." She shook her head, eyes hard. "Not yet, not until this ends." They crashed through abandoned streets, engines screaming, the chase relentless. The black girl directing turned sharp and sudden, the truck groaning with each swerve, but holding together. Alexander's wife clinging tighter, her breath ragged but her eyes glowing with strength. She was alive with him again. That alone gave him more power than wealth ever had. But even as they fled, Samuel's shadow hung over them. Alexander knew this was not over. Samuel wanted more than her silence. He wanted domination. He wanted Alex broken, and he would not stop until he had it finally. They burst into the outskirts, where ruins swallowed the road, the safe house rising ahead, a crumbling building half hidden by weeds. The black girl shouted inside, "Hurry, Alexander!" Crashed the truck to a stop, dragging his wife through the door, the girls sealing it behind them, bolting it with rusted chains inside. The darkness wrapped them, but it was safe for now, the air heavy with dust, old furniture, broken walls, graffiti covering every surface. Alexander sank onto the floor, pulling his wife into his arms, her tears soaking his chest, his own eyes burning with relief and rage. She whispered, "Alex, they kept me because I know something that could destroy Samuel and Vance. And everyone with them. I saw documents, secret accounts, hidden recordings, proof of crimes that stretched to the highest levels. I hid it away before they caught me. It is still out there, waiting." Alexander's breath caught his heart pounding. What kind of proof? She looked into his eyes, her voice steady enough to cut through the silence. Proof of murder, proof of conspiracies, proof that could bring down governments if it reached the world. Black girl leaned closer, urgency in her eyes. "Then we must find it, because until we do, none of us will ever be safe." Alexander tightened his hold on his wife, his mind racing, his heart burning. Samuel's betrayal, Vance's power, the girl's scars, his wife's secret, all threads of a web that reached further than he could yet imagine. But one thing was certain, he would burn this web down before he let it trap them. Again suddenly, a crash shattered the silence. The walls trembling, dust raining from the ceiling, headlights slicing through broken windows, voices shouting outside. They had been found, Samuel's voice booming like thunder. "There is nowhere left to run. Alex, this ends tonight." Alexander pulled his wife behind him, weapon in hand, the black girl, raising hers, her eyes fierce. The door rattled under heavy blows, the chains straining against the force, the night filling with the sound of enemies closing in. Alexander's jaw clenched, his chest heaving, his voice low and unbreakable. Then we end it. Tonight. The black girl's lips curved into a grim smile, his wife's trembling hand slid into his, her whisper. Fears together. The door cracked under the assault light, pouring in shadows of armed men swarming the entrance. Samuel's figure leading them, his eyes burning with triumph. Heart thundered, his grip unyielding as the door shattered wide. The door burst open with a deafening crackwood, splintering metal chains, snapping like twigs. Armed men stormed into the safe house, their boots pounding, their weapons raised. Samuel stood at the center, his cold eyes fixed on Alexander, his lips curling into a cruel smile. This is where it ends. Alexander pulled his wife behind him, his body trembling with fury but unyielding. The black girl crouched low, her weapon steady, her gaze fierce. Samuel's voice thundered over the chaos. Alex, you cannot win, you never could. You were too blind, too weak, always chasing dreams of love, while I carved power out of blood and fire. Surrender now, and maybe I will spare you. Alexander's chest heaved, his heart roaring with everything he had lost and everything he had found again. His wife's hand gripped his tightly, her voice trembling but strong. Alex, whatever happens, I am with you always. The black girl's eyes blazed, her whisper sharp. Then we fight until the last breath. The room exploded into chaos. Gunfire tearing through the air, sparks flying as bullets ripped through walls. Alexander fired with a fury he never knew he possessed. Each shot a declaration of defiance, each breath a vow never to surrender. His wife clung to him, then seized a weapon from the ground, her trembling hands steadying as she fired into the oncoming wave. Her fear replaced by a fire born of survival. Samuel advanced through the smoke, his men falling around him, yet his focus unbroken, his weapon aimed steady at Alexander, his voice slicing through the storm. You cannot protect her forever, Alex. One of us will die tonight. Alexander's voice roared back, then let it be you. They collided in the center of the storm, weapons clashing, fists striking the air thick with the stench of gunpowder and blood. Samuel was stronger, brutal, forged in years of shadows, but Alexander was fueled by something deeper, love, grief, rage, all burning together into unstoppable fire. He fought like a man who had already lost everything once and refused to lose again. The black girl covered their flanks, moving like a ghost, precise and merciless, taking down those who tried to flank them. Her body moving with the rage of a survivor, her voice fierce. Keep fighting, do not stop. Alexander and Samuel's fists collided with bone-crushing force, their weapons knocked aside, their bodies crashing into broken furniture. Samuel's voice a growl. You should have left her in the grave, Alex. She was never meant to live. Alexander's eyes burned with fire. She is my life, she is my soul, and I will never let you touch her again. Samuel slammed him against the wall, his strength brutal. Alexander's vision blurred, his ribs aching, but his wife's cry pierced through the haze. Alex, you cannot give up. Fight. Alex, fight. He felt her voice pour through him like fire, reviving him. His arms surged with renewed strength. He twisted, breaking free, his fist crashing into Samuel's jaw, the sound echoing like thunder. The black girl's weapon clicked empty, her body diving behind cover, grabbing another gun from a fallen man. She shouted, they keep coming, we must end this. No. Alexander grappled with Samuel, the fight primal savage, two men, once brothers, now enemies, locked in war. Samuel sneered, his teeth bloodied. You were always the dreamer, Alex, but dreams cannot survive in this world. Only power and fear rule. Alexander spat blood, his voice steady. Then tonight, I end your rule with a final surge. Alexander drove Samuel back, slamming him onto the shattered floor, his weapon within reach. Samuel lunged for it, but Alexander's hand was faster, his fingers curling round the gun, his breath ragged, his chest heaving. He aimed at Samuel's heart, the years of betrayal, grief, and rage blazing in his eyes. Samuel's voice hissed, "Kill me, then prove you are just like me." Alexander's finger tightened on the trigger, his wife's hand touched his arm, her voice breaking but strong. "Alex, do not let him take your soul. You are not like him." For black girl's eyes locked on his, her voice fierce. "She is right. If you become him, then everything we fought for dies tonight." Alexander's chest heaved, his heart warring within him, the weapon heavy in his hand, the face of his oldest friend twisted beneath him, the memories of brotherhood clashing with the scars of betrayal. Finally, his voice cracked with fire and sorrow. "No, Samuel, I am not like you." Instead of firing, he struck Samuel across the head with the weapon. Samuel collapsed unconscious, blood trailing from his temple. Alexander dropped the gun, his body trembling, his wife collapsing into his arms, sobbing against his chest, whispering, "You saved me, Alex, you saved us." The surviving armed men hesitated, their leader fallen, their eyes darting, uncertain. The black girl raised her weapon, her voice like steel. "Leave now, or join him on the floor." One by one they backed away, slipping into the night, leaving the warehouse in ruin and silence. Alexander sank onto the floor, his wife in his arms, his body broken, but his soul burning with something new, hope. The black girl knelt beside them, her eyes soft yet fierce. "You found her, Alex, but this is not the end. The evidence she holds, the truth, it can destroy men like Vance and Samuel forever, but only if you are willing to risk everything." His wife pulled a small flash drive from her torn clothes, her voice trembling but steady. "I kept it hidden all this time. It holds everything, accounts, recordings, files, enough to bring them down. But if we release it, the world will change forever, and we will never be safe." Again Alexander's eyes locked on hers, his voice deep and unwavering. "Then let the world change. We will fight if we must, but we will no longer hide." The black girl's lips curved into a faint smile, her eyes glistening with tears. "You are stronger than I thought, Billionaire. Maybe now you are the man who can truly end this." The night stretched quiet, the battle finished. The safe house scarred with smoke and blood, but inside its walls something had been reborn. Alexander held his wife close, her heart beat against his chest, her tears soaking his shirt, yet her eyes blazing with life again. After years of captivity, he whispered against her hair, "I lost you once, but never again, never again, never." As dawn crept through the broken windows, the three of them stepped into the pale light, Alexander, his wife, and the black girl, standing together, battered but unbroken, their silhouettes etched against the rising sun, the world waiting, the future uncertain, but their bond unshakably. Alexander turned to them both, his voice steady. "Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find who you really are, and I have found myself in youth." Black girl nodded, silent strength in her eyes. His wife pressed her hand to his heart, whispering, "Together always." The sun rose higher, chasing away the shadows of the night, and for the first time in years, Alexander Cole felt whole, not because of wealth or empire, but because of love, survival, and the truth that no enemy could erase the end.